Linux is at the foundation of so much. Your phone runs on Linux, your Tesla runs on Linux, your TV runs on Linux, your large language model that you, I don't know if you use Claude or ChatGPT, runs on Linux.
So your program pretty much sets the learning pace slower than the average program. Why is it slower and more deliberate than well actually why is a slower, more deliberate pace actually a competitive advantage for students' retention and mastery in Linux?
First, like you said, it helps with retention and engagement. But most importantly, the commitment I had is to help people with no tech background. When you show up and you start talking to a person in a language, in a technical language they've never been exposed to, if you go too fast, Henry, you've lost them in the first turn. That's
Mhm.
why it's important to start very slow. Now we pick up the pace, but we start very slow, very intentionally because we made a commitment. More than 95% of people we train are people who've never sat on a computer to do more than send emails. So we come in acknowledging this. And if you go too fast, because I have competitors, their whole business model is to teach you Linux in 2 weeks. To me, but it's only but their target market is also different. It's someone who was a coder, it's someone who's already in the tech space who just wants to learn Linux. You see what I mean? To add to their portfolio. Me, my target market is different. My target market has never learned anything about tech in general. So it is essential to go slower because if not, you're gonna have a situation where things are gonna fly over your head, and that's not the point. You see what I mean? So it is intentional because of the group of people, the demography we decided to serve. That's essentially the answer.
Okay. So when people think of getting into tech, they almost think of either learning how to be a software developer, they want to get into cybersecurity. But in your instance, why did you choose to anchor Yellowtail's Tech Foundational Program in Linux System Administration and AWS?
For 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 a few reasons. First, this is what I knew, and I wanted to stay in my space and become a subject matter expert. And I think we've succeeded because if you Google Yellowtail Tech, it's one of the few, if not the only, program that's essentially targeting people with no tech background. That's the first reason. The second reason is because I understood that very early. Linux is at the foundation of so much. Your phone runs on Linux, your Tesla runs on Linux, your TV runs on Linux, your large language model that you, I don't know if you use Claude or ChatGPT, runs on Linux. Your cloud run on Linux. So I understood that it was a very foundational type of training and skill to have. Understanding that makes you more relevant. Even people are going to cybersecurity. Most cybersecurity expert, they are first expert in the operating system. Because let me ask you a question, Henry. How are you gonna support and secure an environment if you don't understand the operating system that powers that environment? You see what I mean? So even as a cybersecurity expert, to understand how to secure an environment, you have to understand the environment at its core.
This video is being sponsored by Yellowtail Tech. If you're feeling completely stuck in a dead end job, making less than your worth, and wishing you could break into tech, I need you to stop scrolling and listen up for a second. You don't need a fancy computer science degree or a background in coding to change your life. In fact, 90% of the students who go through Yellowtail Tech start exactly where you are right now, at absolute zero. This is why I fully support Yellowtail Tech. They aren't one of those massive high volume boot camps that just take your money and leave you hanging. They focus on the quality over quantity. In just 6 to 9 months, they give you all the hands-on training you need with AWS and Linux, and the actual career coaching you need to land a high paying IT job. But let me be completely real with you. They handpick their students. They don't care about your past, but they do care about your future. They care about your determination. If you're not serious about putting in the work to change your life, they aren't interested. But if you're ready to build a real high paying career, let's get you on the right track. Click the link in my description and book your free career strategy session with Yellowtail Tech today.
So a lot of people think cybersecurity is just taking security plus. It's way more than that. My wife is a security a professional, but with a cloud and Linux background. That
Mhm.
makes her worth more to the marketplace. Because if not, you're gonna be more in the incident report writing, incident writing policy, which is more and more being done by AI, by the way. So, in order to go into cybersecurity and be very relevant, you need to have deep foundational knowledge in operating system, which is what we're offering to people.
Yeah, no, I definitely would agree on that because it definitely helps out, especially investigations, right? Especially if you know Linux and you know cloud, those are huge right now because some companies still have not converted everything over to the cloud, and so they need you.
And if you even if you're on the cloud, because the cloud is just an abstraction of an operating system. Once
Mhm.
you abstract that operating system, you still need to interact with that abstracted operating system. So you still need to understand Linux. You see what I mean? So because it's in the cloud doesn't take away the importance of understanding how the architecture of the operating system is. You see.
Perfect. Now, earlier I was mentioning how sometimes people sometimes don't know what they want to do until they actually see what it is. For the non-technical listeners out there, how would you explain what a Linux system admin does on a day-to-day basis? And you've kind of already explained the second part of this question. Why are they so vital to modern corporate infrastructure?
The first thing I want to make sure that's clear, and Henry, I'm sure you know that the job of a Linux system administrator is very different according to what company and what industry you fall into.
Hmm.
So if you fall into the USPTO as your first job versus a bank versus a startup, your job is wildly different. If you fall into a small team versus a big team, I have guys who fall into such big teams. For example, the USPTO, they have so much infrastructure to manage. They are monitoring logs all day. You see what I mean? And they love it because they're not challenged. And someone falls into a small team where they are doing everything. They are building servers. They are monitoring servers. They are hardening infrastructure. They are doing reports. They are doing, like you said, investigation of what happened to a server if something happened. So it varies, but the general way I want to describe it is once you go into an environment, let's say a bank, the bank has a few layers, and that's true for every company. The first layer is the infrastructure, the physical infrastructure, meaning the servers, the computers, okay? But on top of this computer, there needs to be something running. And this is where you come in. You are managing, you are making sure that operating system is running 24/7 all all the time. For your let's keep the bank as an example. For your banking app to work, meaning there is the the infrastructure, the operating system, and all the software and the apps and uh, uh, yeah, the software and the apps that are built and being managed on top of that. So you are the layer in between the physical uh, um, um, devices and the software that the end user uh, uh, gets to interact with.